Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous, and that's the Honda Pilot. That's the Subaru Ascent. These are both three-row SUVs that might have a lot more in common than you guys might suspect. If you're new to my channel, you should know that I actually own two new Subarus, and I've driven a lot of Ascents, so I'm very familiar with these. I'm less familiar with the Honda Pilot. So today I took it out for a driving review and a full review, and I realized in my research for these vehicles just how similar the Pilot is. They have basically the same power numbers, although they do that in completely different ways. They're both a top safety pick plus. They're both some of the two best Japanese automakers, three-row version of the SUV. And now that the Pilot has an updated all-wheel drive system, it's actually a lot more competitive to the Subaru Ascent than it used to be. The Pilot actually started 20-some years ago in 2003. This fourth generation of it came out just a couple years ago in 2023. The Ascent, it's been out since around 2019, so you might think it's getting long in the tooth, but it's actually very well refreshed and redesigned. That was done a few years ago, and you're going to see on the interior in just a moment how similar and competitive these vehicles actually are. So there's a lot that we need to get into in this side-by-side comparison, and if you guys like anything that you see today, please consider liking this video. Comment your thoughts and opinions below, subscribe if you haven't already, and with that said, let's get right into this comparison review. So while these are both mid-size unibody crossover SUVs, they both weigh around 4,500 pounds, basically just depending on how many luxurious options they have. They're both about 16.5 feet long, a little bit over 6 feet wide, and roughly 6 feet tall. The Ascent right here is actually a touring, so it's the highest trim level, meaning this is about a $50,000 example, but a base model, which is literally called the base Ascent, the lowest of about 8 trim levels, it starts at about $34,000. So this is much more competitively priced than the Honda Pilot, which the Sport model, which is the base model, starts at around $40,000. This one specifically, though, is an EXL, meaning it's about $43,000. For that, you get heated leather seats, you get a power liftgate, you get a few extra parking sensors, and a few more options like Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and just interior little bits. But most of it's, standard safety features on both of these. They both have adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist, and all of those basic features, which is why these are both top safety pick pluses. They both come with LED headlights and fog lights, and so many other reasons to consider them. But let's start under the hood. This powertrain might be more reliable than that powertrain, if we're being honest. This has Honda's dual overhead cam V6. It's a 3.5 liter. Different variations of it have been around for over 20 years now. It makes 285 horsepower at its peak RPM and about 262 pound-feet of torque. It is slightly front-wheel drive biased, as you'll see with how it's transversely mounted under the hood. But because the Pilot is now 6.5 feet wide, you actually have a lot of room to work on it and to change the serpentine belt. I don't think the layout under the hood is as clean as the Ascent, as you'll see in a minute, but you still have induction and ventilation to give some cold, fresh air to the air filter in the box and to simply go through the system. This, I just did a 0 to 60 on. It did a high 7-second true time. That was at about 4,000 feet of altitude when this thing is down on power about 12 to 14%. And then here we have the Ascent. Oh, and I forgot, guys, I'm sorry, that has a 10-speed automatic transmission, which is a very new thing from Honda. It actually shifts really quickly. The paddle shifters, even in sport mode, they kind of suck. They don't move very quickly. But normal upshifts in sport mode are actually really quick when the computer can think. When you try to get involved, unless you're using the paddles just to maybe engine brake and downshift, which this would actually do pretty good, just leave it to the computer, let it do its thing. It has a bunch of drive modes. It works pretty well. This is a 2.4 liter. It's actually kind of an overbuilt turbo engine. It has a top mount intercooler. It's probably easier to work on for most aspects of it, but it's connected to a CVT, which for most people, Subaru CVTs are about as reliable as they come. This historically has had a better all-wheel drive system. The only issue that I really have with this is the CVT, if it were to ever fail outside of warranty, they're like 10 grand to fix, which is over twice as much as a transmission should be. But with the cost savings over what you'd pay for a more expensive Honda Pilot, maybe spend a couple grand to get the extended warranty, which also covers the bumper to bumper. But that can be up to you. I just want to mention that powertrain may be more reliable because of the transmission, but overall, I think both engines are very, very good. And on this one, because it's a turbo, you have a ton of induction to the intercooler to cool it down. You have fuse boxes on the periphery, battery, all of your reservoirs. You can probably already tell this just looks much more straightforward, much easier to work on. Serpentine belts right there. This puts a little bit more power to the rear wheels, at least it feels like that. In a lot of driving, it's just a symmetrical all-wheel drive system, which is very proven, very reliable. but you really can't go wrong with either of these, making 260 peak horsepower and a more impressive 277 torque. So it makes 13 more pound-feet of torque than that, and about a half the RPM, because that torque peaks out at 2,000 RPM rather than in the 4,000 RPM range. This might feel more punchy around town, but true 0 to 60s on these are usually in the high 7s or the low 8s, depending on the density altitude I'm testing it in. I don't do two vehicle comparisons super often. Usually it's single vehicle reviews. So I'm gonna structure this a little bit different than I have in the past. So let me know what you guys think of that. But quickly, let's go over the front end and comment below which front end looks better with these LED headlights. I have not driven the Pilot at night. I do know the Ascent is incredibly bright at night, and you even have functional aerodynamics on the bumper, which look pretty good. I do like the big, huge Honda badge and functional aero all throughout the majority of the grille. There's not a lot of dead space in there, which is pretty nice. The Ascent, it definitely looks better than the pre-refresh. It has a front-facing camera, but that's kind of unfair because this is a higher trim level. And actually that looks like a pretty good front end too. So what do you guys like more? Comment that below. Subaru has traditionally been more function over form, so I can't say I absolutely love the rear end of this 3-row SUV, the Ascent. I don't necessarily love the Pilot either, but I think the refreshed Pilot probably looks a little bit more into what I would be personally attracted to. Anyways, these are the keys. They both have lock, unlock, power liftgate because they're spec'd with that, and then the panic button. You'll notice that the Honda though also has remote start. You actually can get remote start for the Ascent if you pay a couple $100 for a few-year subscription of the My Subaru app. I have it on my Outback Wilderness. It actually works really good. You can also unlock and lock the vehicle. You can change the temperature and climate controls. You can see how much gas you have. You basically have a lot of control. I don't know if you can access all that stuff on the Honda, so please comment that below. Otherwise, let's see which one opens up faster. I'll slightly lead with the Ascent and then the Honda. I think the Honda is a little bit slower from my testing earlier in the day. Yeah, drastically slower. But back here, you have pretty similar cargo capacity on either of them. They are 3-row SUV, 8-seater or 7-seater. This one is specifically the 7-seater. There's not a bench in the middle, which is more just offered on the lower trim levels. The fancier trim levels get these captain chairs. But behind the 3rd row, so from here and beyond, you have about 18.5 cubic feet of room, which is actually very similar to the Honda. You can lower it and you can lock it, because again, remember, this is a higher trim level. And then you have very little storage under here. And then the tire, which is unfortunately only a temporary spare, that's underneath the vehicle, right under here. But it's very similar on the Pilot. 18 cubic feet, just like the Subaru. If I had all the 3rd row seats up, you can actually adjust this and get a little bit more reclination and kind of move that around. Or because of how long the handle is, let's do this, 2 hands for just a moment. You can lay it basically flat, and then you have usually in the mid 40 cubic foot range for these. And then if you go with the 2nd row down too, you actually get up to about 86 feet on both of these. So it's very similar. There we go. And then this Pilot actually has more cargo capacity down here. Doesn't come with the sunshade how this one is spec'd, which you can see that the sunshade was already hidden away down there. But we're gonna lower the hatches. I have one remote in each hand, so trust me, I'm gonna push these at the same time and we'll see what the vehicles do to respond in 3, 2, 1, go. So the Subaru is a little bit later to initiate, and the Subaru actually won that comparison. Not too bad. There's a variety of wheels that can be optioned on each of these. Because this is the Touring, it has a 20-inch wheel and a Falcon rubber band tire. Personally, I like more sidewall, but on normal city streets, the Subarus, even with up to 20-inch wheels, you really don't feel like it's a rougher ride. I think the Subaru suspension just does a really good job, but I do prefer the Honda for this. Only having an 18-inch wheel and a 255/60 18 means you have a lot more sidewall on this Goodyear tire. I also prefer that the gas door is located on the driver's side of the Honda, where it's on the passenger side of the Ascent. This does have a bigger fuel tank, 19.3 gallons compared to 18.5. Both of them only need mid-octane, like 87 octane where I'm at currently is the mid-grade, and they both have a pretty similar MPG rating, around 19 in the city, around 25, 26 on the highway. So your max road trip and range with either of these is only gonna be around 460 miles. And across the board, even the cheapest base model Ascent, I believe, has the roof rails, whereas this mid $40,000 EXL Honda Pilot does not. But if we hop inside, you'll notice you have proximity key features to lock and unlock the vehicle. You have turn signals on the mirror. You have blind spot monitoring indicators right there. And this door panel just feels more solid than the Subarus. It feels very well built, very heavy. And when we take a look at it, notice you have some cup holders. You have the upper tray You just have a lot of nice features. Just like the Subaru, you have a bunch of different mismatched materials which somehow together look actually pretty decent, but this just feels like a more solid door panel. Not saying the Subaru is bad, but this just feels like old school Honda build quality. Same with these controls right here. They're huge, they're beefy, you could use them wearing gloves. Heated leather seats, but no sunroof up top for $45,000. You also don't have all other mats. You only have rubberized pedals, but at least you get a rubberized dead pedal. The hood releases around the corner over here. A few options right here. Lighting stock, you can tilt and telescope the wheel. Paddle shifters, which again, I don't really recommend you use on this, but overall, it's a pretty nice place to be. The Honda Pilot has a really nice metallic silver paint color. It's called Lunar Silver Metallic, technically, and it just looks really good. I'm assuming, like a lot of current automakers, it's overly thin and you have to be careful to not tailgate and catch rocks. And then the crystal white pearl on this also has a lot of metallic flake. So I don't think you can go wrong with either color or either paint by either of these producers that are probably fairly competitive. And then keep in mind, this is about $5,000 more than what that brand new would be. Currently, these are both at Twin Falls Subaru, so I'll link them below if you're interested. They're a fantastic dealership. Everything's below MSRP and shipped all over the country. But this has chrome, whether you like it or not. Chrome door handles also has the options to lock, the mirrors fold in, or to unlock. Kind of slow, maybe a little bit slower than the Honda on this one. And then the door panel, like I mentioned before, you have a bunch of different materials. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here, 6. Harman Kardon speakers. You don't have the upper tray, but you just have a really nice, comfortable place to be, and I love the wood trim. You also have memory seats. This one does not have all the mats installed. As you guys saw, there's a huge pile of those in the back, and the Touring actually has some really fancy mats. But rubberized pedals, hood release, fuse box, basically the same lighting options, and the tail hatch lift back there. A little bit of storage. And then this is your bolstered, heated, and ventilated brown leather seat. And you have a big power moonroof up top, but because it's getting pretty hot outside, I'm just gonna leave that closed for now. And so now getting into the Pilot and trying to kick some of this dust off of my shoes, we fired up with the push button start. Very simple, very straightforward for being electronic gauges. You have climate controls that are physical. You have a touchscreen that also has Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, just like the Subaru, but you don't have everything tied into this, which I love, because you have all of your other physical buttons and controls down here for auto start, stop. Here's the drive modes I talked about earlier. Look at all these options that you have. Sport, normal, econ, snow, trail, sand, and tow. Pretty cool. Both of these vehicles tow about 5,000 pounds. I forgot to mention that earlier. You have some good sized cup holders, extra storage right there, just like an old school Honda, which I absolutely love. Some plugins, some USBs, a wireless charger, extra storage, ventilation basically throughout, and it's 6.5 feet wide, so it really feels like you have a lot of room, and a huge center armrest. No plugins in here, which is disappointing. You do have a pencil holder or a pixie stick holder right there, but overall it's pretty good. You have a mirror to spy on the back seat. You have a sunglass holder. You have basically the same mirror out of the Subaru with auto dimming mirror features, and then the garage door openers. This unfortunately does not slide or extend, which I don't understand why. But then you have an incandescent light and a mirror to check yourself out. And the horn, it's loud, kind of high-pitched, but overall this is a nice place to be. Very simple, very straightforward. It just feels durable, it feels reliable. I think this is going to be really good and straightforward for so many people. So let's turn it off and we'll hop in the Ascent. Now that we're in the Ascent, you know, I really am digging these Java brown leather seats. I just think it's a nice place to be, so we're going to fire it up. The needles dance. The monitoring system works. That basically beeps at you every second that you're not looking at the road. It can be kind of annoying. It is probably good to keep you paying attention, but it can be kind of annoying. Otherwise, leather-wrapped heated steering wheel. You have voice and volume controls on the left. Adaptive cruise settings look very familiar and similar to the Honda right there. On the right of the wheel, paddle shifters as well. It simulates 8 speeds from the CVT. The paddle shifters on this are no better than the Honda. They both kind of stink, honestly. And then you have basically way too many controls inside of this, which I wish it was faster. I wish it worked better. Basically, I only use Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in our own Subarus, but you do have ventilated seats, heated seats. And then down here, you have a camera. So you have a front-facing and a 360-degree view. The clarity on this is better than other Subarus. It actually works fairly decently. And then you have a 12-volt, some storage that's rubber-lined and slanted down, which I like. I wish it was bigger, but it's at least set up well. Plugins right there, smaller cup holders than the other one. And then right here, we have a center console with a lifty tray, kind of like a felt line. It also is smaller than the Pilot, and it similarly does not have any plugins. Otherwise, you have a digital rear view mirror. I don't really like those. Kind of makes me feel trippy looking at them, but then you can't really see fantastically well through the rear, through the little one going through 16 feet of vehicle. So you're kind of at a loss either way. And then you can move the sunshade. I'll show you that right here because I didn't show you that earlier. And then the first half of it lifts and slides like a normal sunroof. It doesn't completely open, but that's a lot of light. That's a lot of heat in. So maybe consider tinting that and your front windows if you get the chance. If you're in southern Idaho or anywhere nearby, check out the tint lady. She'll give you a discount if you mention her in my video. Otherwise, you have LED lighting and this slides. Not too bad. With that said, let's turn it off and we'll hop in the back seats of each of these behemoths. The second and third row of these gets pretty interesting. First of all, the Honda has a privacy shade in addition to the factory tint, which is probably about 25% and actually looks really good in person. You can check out the light difference right there. And then just like the front, you have so many different materials. It's pretty interesting, but they're all solid. This just feels like such a good door pocket, door handle. You have all your extra storage, a speaker here, speaker here. The speakers, the Harman Kardons definitely sound better in the Subaru, but it is an upgraded system. The base system seems pretty similar to this, to where it's clear, but it's more shallow. There's not a lot of bass or depth to it, but both of these vehicles are insulated pretty well for being $40-some thousand Japanese vehicles. It's not going to be a Bentley, it's not going to be a Rolls Royce, but it's going to be pretty good for what you're paying, which is technically less than the average new vehicle. It's just surprising for how much you get. But anyways, leather seats back here. It's easy to move them. I'm going to show you that in just a second, but even at 5'11", I have tons of room. Plus there's a bar under here so I can slide back that far, giving myself this much room in front of my knees, so it's not bad. Or if I want, I can dig my knees almost into the seat and give the back third row a whole lot of room back there. So that's interesting. Otherwise, ventilation, you have some options, you have some controls. You have to pull the silly little strap to get the back up, so I might need two hands for that. Sorry about that, guys. But that is up now. Middle seat, fairly wide enough for a thin, slender adult or child. And then you can easily drop it and it feels pretty solid. You have some cup holders and a tray. So now I'm gonna hop out and I'm gonna do something that I don't love to do, and that's get into the third row of a mid-size crossover SUV. I'm just gonna pull the strap, which is gonna drop the backrest, and then I can slide it forward. Watch out for the seat belt that you don't hang yourself on the way in. That's about as far forward as it can get. It's not a ton of room. You do have a little step right there. I feel so bad for getting some dirt on this, but we're gonna have to do what we have to do. And sitting back here, now I'm just gonna pull the seat, slide it back, and I actually have a little bit of room in front of my knees. I actually have really good headroom in this. There is the seat belt for the middle seat right there. And it's actually not too bad to hang out back here. You have a plug-in, some cup holders. You actually have two. And a vent right there. And is that a vent? Or maybe oh, that's probably just like a tie down area right there if you have this row drop down. But you have the child safety tether. You have another way to get out of here and to slide it forward. You also have two cup holders on this side, and then the headrests that adjust, and you can even reach back and get into your 18 cubic feet of hatch room if you need to. But anyways, let's drop it. Ooh, fancy. And I'm gonna hop out now. Now coming around to the driver's side, second row, you also have a sunshade. So Subaru is competing pretty nicely. Wood trim, nice materials, quite the variety. But you actually have a cup holder back here, which is pretty cool. Harman Kardon speakers and a smaller size pocket down there. And then this is the captain chair. It's really nice. You have an armrest in the center. You can see that there's a few different ways to adjust it. But let's get inside the second row and see how we fit. Quite a bit of room in front of my knees. There is a bar under the seat. I can get basically closer than I want to. I can push myself all the way into there and open up the back. Probably quite a bit more than what the Pilot offered. But being reasonable, maybe, I don't know, you can actually do a lot of incremental changes. Maybe right there. You have a little storage right here, some plugins, heated seats on this one. Again, this is a higher trim level. And then the armrest comes down nicely. I do like that you can actually climb through the center row, but if you do get the less expensive 8-seater version of the Ascent, this is just a bench. It's definitely not going to be quite as nice. And to be fair, let's get into the back the same way I had to on the Pilot. So we're going to drop this down. Should slide forward. And I think that's more room. What do you guys think? Although I think it looks tighter back here. I guess we are just gonna have to see what happens. Trying to kick some dust off my feet. And back here, okay, I do not like this. I am hitting the ceiling. I feel very claustrophobic. And this is not me having a good time, if you know what I'm saying. You at least have some plug-in, some ventilation, an extra cup holder over here. That's where you could plug in your privacy shade that you saw down below earlier. A few cup holders, some storage over here. The headrests are down right now. I can, on both of these, pull a strap and recline. But even when I recline, the ventilation and the LED lighting, it's not going to make up for the discomfort I have. I do not like the third row as much on this. I think if you're going to fit full-size adults, the Pilot's probably the option for you, assuming that your second row occupants are being generous and not hogging too much room up there. Anyways, it's time to get out of this thing. Final thoughts of these two 16.5-foot behemoth mid-size SUVs is they both offer a lot. If you don't need the third row, sure, take it out, fold it down, do whatever you have to do, because then you'll have 46 cubic feet of room or so, which is a lot for this type of vehicle. Or if you need to haul around people in the back, kids, anyone, you know, 7 or 8 people, that's pretty decent, not having to have a minivan, having a competent, good all-wheel drive system. Both of these, they offer a lot. They're top safety pick plus. There's really a lot of reasons to love both of these, but more than anything, they both have heritage. They both have a pretty good reputation. The Ascent hasn't been around for very long, but Subaru as a company has been taking ground and becoming a bigger company all the time, even with Toyota owning a portion of them. And Honda, well, we know them for reliability. The fact that they refuse to put a CVT and a small turbocharged engine in theirs, not knocking the Subaru, this is a good powertrain, but the fact that they still have the old school V6, which is not very efficient, but it sounds good, pulls good, makes good power. I'm just really happy that both of these vehicles exist and that you can have a variety. The Ascent probably is capable of better MPG in ideal conditions because of how turbochargers work, and it has more low-end torque, making it funner and faster and more lively around town. But the Honda has a little bit more of a scream to it, kind of like the big box truck behind it. It just sounds a little bit louder while both being very well insulated, both looking very similar. And really, I think there's a reason why these sell over 100,000 every single year, and the Ascent sell 40 to 80,000 every single year. They're both really good options, and if you don't need a full 19-foot long, you know, full-size body-on-frame SUV that gets worse MPG and just takes up more space, I think these are really good options, and I definitely recommend you test drive them for yourself. But don't just take my word for it. I'm just a random person you listen to on the internet. Go test drive these for yourself. Check out the Mazda CX9. Check out the Toyota Highlander. Check out the American competitors as well if you're interested, or the luxurious class, because if you're going to spend 50 grand on this or 55 grand on a fully loaded out Nightshade or whatever Honda's currently calling their blacked out edition of the Pilot, you are spending a very shiny, very pretty penny, and they're not cheap, but they do seem good, and I do think both of these vehicles will last a very long time. And I want to know your thoughts and opinions below, so comment those down in the comment section. Like this video if you got anything out of it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you want to see next, and until next time, take care, guys.